been a real pleasure to be at this conference. It's not often I attend 2 days of speeches where I find so little to disagree with. It's quite wonderful. Maybe one little point of disagreement with our last speaker. As someone that spent a lot of time looking at the Soviet Union, I know there are times in the past has not been predictable. Well, the topic assigned to me today is expand and strengthen global information efforts. When I first read over this topic, it was clear why it was assigned. We're being hurt by Russian propaganda. And it's not just the disinformation and the lies that come from those that are on the Russian payroll or even the useful idiots. We have a problem with people that simply don't know history, don't know culture, and pick up some fact that comes from a Russian propaganda effort. And in possession of that fact without context, they maybe contribute in a negative way to the debate, or at the minimum are neutralized and don't fight for what is right. So this is something we have to address. I don't need to list all the Russian disinformation that we encounter when in articles and in questions when we speak. You all know that better than I do. But the question then is, what are we going to do about it? And I have four things that I wish to discuss. And I'll begin that, if you permit me, with a personal story. I came into politics and my political views were formed in very large part because of people that were colleagues of your fathers and grandfathers. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. My earliest political memories were of DEPs and telling their stories. And the stories we heard in Cleveland were no different than the stories all of you heard in your own community. So after going through that, no one could tell me anything about communism or the Soviet Union or Russian disinformation. And why do I mention this story? Because if you grow up hearing things from people you trust over many years, you have the courage of your convictions and the willingness to fight when it's necessary to fight, because it's deep-rooted. And I'm very encouraged by what you were saying about your recruitment of people into politics and into political life and into the news media, because in the U.S., I think we're not doing a good enough job of that. The people in the diaspora have great contacts within government in the United States, and I think more effort needs to be made to use those contacts to place the promising young people in Congress, in the executive branch, and to guide their careers along. What an impact that has. The speaker yesterday on international humanitarian efforts bemoaned the fact that there were so few Ukrainians in these international organizations, but what an effect they have when they're there. Oreste Chyczij was mentioned yesterday, 30 years in the U.S. Congress on the Helsinki Commission. I think about the thousands of conversations he had with members of Congress. And over time, hearing this from Oreste and being educated, that's part of the reason some of them have backbone to support Ukraine today. All these efforts are great and they're the result of the diaspora, but they need to be expanded. That's my first point. Second point has to do with the contacts all of you have with people in government and people in the media. I think it was correctly said that when you go to present, you have to keep on a single topic because you can't advocate 10 things in a single meeting with a member of parliament or a member of Congress. But I would like to urge you to, whenever you're in a situation like that, always say something about Ukrainian history. You may think it's known, but especially in the U.S., it's not known. I'm amazed sometimes in informal social dinners, talking with people that are members of Congress, people that are senators, people that are staff, people that are in the bureaucracy, that they simply don't know basic things about Ukrainian history. And the more that is known about Ukrainian history, there's more that's known about your struggle, the easier it will be to get yes answers down the road. If truth is on the side of Ukraine, it needs to be spread. But of course, you can't do everything in the private sector. Russian disinformation efforts are so mammoth, so pervasive, that government efforts need to be made to counter them. And they need to be made by governments throughout the world. We, thinking we had won the Cold War and there was no future but democracy, dismantled our information organization, USIA, in the United States. There's a debate now about rebuilding it, and I think that debate will be seriously made. There are efforts in many European countries now, at least the beginnings of efforts, to find out how to confront and counter Russian propaganda. I think the diaspora needs to be involved in these efforts. The louder the debate is about taking the information warfare inside of Russia to point out the contradictions, the stolen wealth of Putin, the money that's taken from infrastructure projects, the lavish lifestyle of people around Putin while others have not enough to eat. These are themes and many more that we need to push that has to be done by government. Even the debate, though, I think is useful because Putin cannot stand up to the big lie. Solzhenitsyn, the great anti-communist, who unfortunately was a great imperialist also, had one thing right. He said, a system like the Soviet Union, and I would add Putin's Russia, cannot survive without lies. And to the extent that those lies can be exposed, it weakens his grip on power. And to the extent that he sees a discussion of a major propaganda effort, or truth effort, I should say, inside of Russia, we may find that he's more reasonable on the bargaining table. The fourth point is something that I think can be done relatively quickly. We heard talk yesterday, I think it was from Mr. Bandera, about how most people young people get their information from Facebook. I know another statistic that of all the film that's watched in the United States, more is watched on iPhones and smartphones than is watched on TV and in the theater. We need to know how to compete in that space. And one way to do that, I would suggest, would be to mobilize young people in the cities where the diaspora is strong. Assign them a certain website or two websites where they can continually go against the Russian propaganda that is there every day. That propaganda should not be permitted to stand on its own. And by the way, as they're meeting these arguments online, they will better educate themselves, as they need to educate themselves to deal with these arguments. This probably needs some coordination in terms of what community would be responsible for what website. It probably needs some support from the academics that will give the bullet points that are to be raised. But I think it's something that could be stood up rather quickly and would have a dramatic effect. So I want to close simply by thanking all you for your efforts and wish you the best, and all of us the best of luck in the long fight ahead.
For drawing together